It's time once again for another cold front.
Today we'll be talking about international weather.
From the Northern Hemisphere to the Southern Hemisphere, we're giving first-hand accounts of weather around the world.
The cold front starts right now.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Cold Front. I'm Sabrina Bates.
And I'm Joie Bettenhausen. Today, Shadle joins us in the studio to talk about her experience with weather in a different country. So, Sky, what year are you in Valpo and what are you involved in on campus?
So I'm a junior here at Valpo, and I'm involved in a bunch of campus activities. So I'm a tour guide here, I'm an overnight host, I'm in Chi Omega, and I recently went abroad to France.
So what was the weather usually like in France?
So the weather kind of varied. So in Valpo we have a lot of vary as well, but it was a little bit warmer over there. So typical day would be around 45, 50 degrees towards the winter. So I was there from August until December. And so like when I got there it was really warm, obviously. And then it started cooling down probably like end of September to around like 55, 60, I say cooling down. And then the coldest it ever got, the coldest day we ever had there was 28 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow, that's not that cold at all.
No, not at all. How is the weather there different from the weather in the U.S.?
Yeah, so the weather here varies a lot, especially in the Midwest. And there was pretty consistent. We'd have a bunch of rainy days kind of towards like the November season. And the wind, it was a lot less windy there, even though I was on the ocean, which was kind of surprising.
So did you feel like you had to pack differently or wear different types of clothes? Like, were you prepared for living in a different area?
Yeah, so I think I was kind of expecting the same climate when I went over, and so I was like, oh, I'll get there in summer and then I'll have a winter. And it didn't work exactly like that. It kind of got there and then it was like that weird like rainy period of like 45, 50 degrees when it's like, what do I wear? And so I had to like kind of go out, buy different clothes. So kind of prepared, but definitely had to buy new stuff too.
Okay.
So Sky, why did you choose to study abroad?
So I knew that I wanted to go abroad coming into Valpo. I had taken French in high school and I continued it here when I got here. And so I wanted to continue doing that, and so I wanted to go to France and took all my classes in French and grew my language there.
Now, did you visit other countries while you were there?
Yeah, so I had a total of 10 countries when I was over there.
Did the weather vary at each of those countries a little differently?
Yeah, it really did. So in Amsterdam, I know I was there like in the middle of December, and it was freezing, it was snowing. I was like, wow, snow in Europe! Because I hadn't seen it. It was like snowing here, but I hadn't seen it. Spain was obviously beautiful, super warm. Italy, I did Rome towards like the middle of, the beginning, middle of December, and it was like 55, 60. So
wow.
Yeah, right now where I was in France, it's like 55-ish, so it's a lot different.
Wow. Now I know you were talking to me offset earlier that France received its first snowfall.
Yeah, so the place where I was in France, it's called La Rochelle. It's 2 hours north of Bordeaux. They got their first snowfall for the first time since 1900, 2 days ago. So it was like 2 or 3 flakes, probably, really nothing. It was really nothing much, but enough to make a difference, and everyone freaked out.
Did it cause like any issues with like travel or commutes, like you know how it snows in Texas and they call a state of emergency?
Yeah, so they'll get like a few inches of snow in Texas. There was just like a few flakes, so it really wasn't much. It started out as like rain, and then over the night it froze, so really nothing too intense, but.
That's awesome. Now, would you recommend studying abroad to anyone else on campus?
Absolutely. Studying abroad was one of my absolute favorite things I've ever done in my entire life. I really grew as a person. I think that it pushes you like outside of your limits, especially going on a program that's not like through Valpo, pushes you to get outside of your community here and to really like interact in different cultures and different environments. And yeah, it was amazing.
Well, that's great that you had such an amazing experience abroad.
Yes.
So we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're talking about the drought in South Africa.
Plus, we'll discuss the climate of the Southern Hemisphere.
Stay tuned.
Well, I think that's all we need. Thank you so much for coming in. We'll be in touch.
Okay, this is it. Just shake his hand and walk out with your head held high. Don't mess this up.
Thank you.
Nailed it. Don't let a bad handshake get in the way of getting the job you want. Find out more at the Career Center.
What is passion? At Valpo, it's something that pours out of us uncontrollably. It's a late night shot of caffeine, cramming for finals, a jam session with friends. It sees deep into space, turns big stuff into small potatoes, floats boats and floods the senses. Passion is alive, it has a heartbeat, and it lives in you. How do we know? Because at Valpo, passion is who we are.
Welcome back to the cold front. Drought can be a major concern for parts of the United States when there is a lack of rainfall. One example is the severe drought in the Texas Panhandle, where burn bans are in place.
People on the other side of the world have a similar problem too, but it's much worse. Cape Town, South Africa is experiencing their worst drought in over a century.
Cape Town is South Africa's second largest city and an international tourist location, and they are ranked as the 30th driest country in the world.
Day zero is near for Cape Town. It's the day when the taps run dry. City officials originally declared this day would come on April 22nd. It has now been moved up to April 16th.
This is drone footage of the area that is under a drought. This crisis has developed over years and has worsened due to three factors. The metro area's population is growing rapidly. It's the worst drought in a century and a quickly changing climate.
Residents are being asked to curb the amount of municipal water they use each day to just 50 liters. That's just a little over 13 gallons. The allotment was reduced from 87 liters. Residents attempted to ignore measures can face fines and installation of water management meters if they do not comply.
Residents are learning to be creative with the water shortage. They have buckets in their showers and sinks to save excess water. The gray water is then used to flush the toilets.
Some are filling up their buckets with water from the city supplies, which can actually cause more problems.
The drinking water is a big concern. Residents are worried to drink the tap water. There have been causes of upset stomachs due to the brown water.
The water quality is poor. People are resorting to collecting water from a natural spring a few times a month to have water to drink.
The government is stepping in to manage the amount of people who come to the spring each week. People may only visit the water site at certain times of the day when city officials are present.
People are afraid. The water levels at the dams that supply water to the city are continuing to shrink. Residents are advised to buy bottled water or to leave the city. Sacrifices need to be made.
This video shows an area at Three Waters Loof Dam, which provides much of the water for Cape Town. Alexandra Draper shot this video and said she and her family often take Sunday drives by here, and the sandy areas and trees are usually covered with water.
It's frightening to see the lack of water in South Africa. The water reservoir just shown is at 13.7% capacity, showing signs of water depletion.
Typically, winter cold fronts with westerly winds bring rain to Cape Town during this time, but these rainfalls are becoming less and less due to climate change. A high-pressure system in the Atlantic Ocean is acting as a barrier to the rainy weather systems.
Long-term climate models are showing a trend that can reduce the annual rainfall up to 40%. This is why the current water crisis in Cape Town should be treated as a long-term problem with a long-term solution. So this problem in South Africa is definitely something that's very dramatic, probably not something they've seen in a long time in Africa.
Right, it sounds like it's really devastating to not only the climate, but to the public as well. Having all those water lines and stipulations on how much water you can have, I know that would be difficult for me to try and live in.
Right, and Cape Town is a rapidly growing city. They have, I believe, over 40 million people who are just already in this metroplex area. So the fact that no one has clean water to drink and there's not enough water for everyone is definitely devastating.
Right, and I think about, the wildfires and different disasters and droughts that we see here in the United States, and I don't think it's ever become that severe, especially this past year with places in the West.
No, yeah, I don't think so either. I know there is the drought going on right now around the Texas-Oklahoma panhandle, and they have burn bans, so they need to comply to those and make sure they're not burning anything that could cause a fire.
Right.
But no, we're not needing to restrict any water, at least in the U.S.
No, and thankfully we don't have to deal with that. But I know this is definitely a devastating time for all those people, and just looking back at that footage, it's breathtaking almost, because, you know, we don't see that here.
It is, because their water reservoirs, their dams, they're at such a low capacity that it looks like their land is completely different than it probably was 100 years ago.
Right, you see, you know, vegetation and things like that, and then you look at these videos and trees are completely bare.
Right.
You know, the reservoirs are completely dry, it's completely brown. It's just breathtaking to look at those images.
It definitely makes you think how lucky you are to live here, where we have a ton of water by the Great Lakes at least. We're not in other areas where either other parts of the world or even in the southeast, they had a drought a few years back where they didn't have enough water supply either, or enough rainfall at least. So
Right, it's definitely an interesting topic for sure. Another commercial break coming up, but when we come back, we will be talking about the Southern Hemisphere.
In a world where entertainment is at risk, one man is given a mission, but he is about to face his biggest challenge yet. He will race against the clock and open doors to new possibilities that will save weekends as we know it.
What are you doing?
I'm looking for free movies.
Oh, I'll help you with that.
Just go to movies.valpo.edu. They have all the best movies, including The Hobbit and 22 Jump Street.
Whoa, it's that easy?
It's that easy.
Grab some popcorn, grab some buddies, and watch movies.valpo.edu's great selection.
thank you for sticking with us. The past week we sat down with Dr. Balz Elschultz to learn more about southern hemispheric weather within the tropics.
Let's take a look at what she had to say.
So in the southern hemisphere, it's a little different than the northern hemisphere where we live. Mostly because the land masses are further equatorward. So we've got, of course, Antarctica, the South Pole, but then there's this gap where there's oceans and there's no land masses. Like we have the Rockies in Canada and Europe and Siberia. So patterns move a little more quickly around those westerlies they call. So it was really good for sailing ships back in the day and trading ships. So everything kind of weather-wise is shifted a little more equatorward where it's warmer. So Australia, South America, South Africa, those are really the continents, those are the ones we think of, have really experienced a little more subtropical climate than we necessarily see here. Whereas Costa Rica, Central America, Sub-Saharan Africa, those places would as well. So patterns move quickly, but it's not necessarily different. Australia still sees cold fronts and warm fronts, but perhaps not as big an impact. Far southern Australia will see cold fronts a little more often, but northern Australia will get more hurricanes this time of year. So right now it's the midst of their summer, heading towards fall, but really it's still really summertime there. So they're experiencing hurricanes. There's a strong one out in the Indian Ocean. Dynamically, it's not different. The physics is the same, so the equations are the same. So you see systems that are similar, like fronts and jet streams, but I think because of the land masses not being part of that big of an equation in the mid-latitudes, you get more of a tropical influence. So there's this really neat thing, the map behind me shows that Australia and the Pacific, there's this neat thing called the South Pacific Convergence Zone. So it's this mix of the tropics, the intertropical convergence zone, which is where the convergence of the the tropical easterlies and the mid-latitude westerlies meet, but then it also gets into where some of the fronts and the low pressure systems, troughs of the mid-latitudes, more like what we experience, interact together, and you get this long stream of clouds that stretch across the Pacific, so the South Pacific Convergence Zone, that are a mix of both things. With climate change and global warming, because so much of the Southern Hemisphere land masses and where people live are dominated by the tropics and the more equatorial waters, that's heating up. So in some ways, an extreme thing is not necessarily life endangering, but well, it is. So in Australia, heat is the big thing, and warm waters. So the great coral reefs are in real danger of coral bleaching, which is when it gets too hot for a long period of time in the water, and the organisms that are coral actually die, and they turn white when they die. And so these beautiful coral reefs, which are all colors and support all this life, are dying because of those hot waters. At the same time, Australia has had some pretty extreme droughts. And along with droughts, then there's fires. So they also get fires. But then they also get hurricanes along the northern periphery of that continent. We've had some pretty strong hurricanes hit Madagascar. Price of vanilla ice cream has gone up, and a bottle of pure vanilla from Madagascar has more than quadrupled over the past year. An $8 bottle probably costs $32 right now.
One last break, but when we come back, we'll be looking at the current conditions in South Korea for the 2018 Winter Olympics.
Plus that and more in just a few minutes. Welcome back to the Cold Front. A worldwide event is coming up, and that is the 2018 Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang. Sabrina's on the wall to show us the current conditions in South Korea. Sabrina?
Yeah, Joy, we're taking a look at the weather on the other side of the world over in South Korea right now. Now, this graphic is zooming into what the temperatures have been over the past few hours. It's actually warmed up just a little bit, so we're a little bit warmer. We're no longer in the 20s as we zoom into Pyeongchang and where the Olympic Stadium is. We're going to be seeing temperatures right now in the upper 30s, and that's warmer than actually what it has been. It's going to be cooler for the next few days when the Olympics actually begins. This is the last 12 hours. If we're taking a look at the satellite and radar, there are a lot of clouds over in North Korea, but we do see just some few wispy clouds making their way over from the Indian Ocean over the peninsula. Over the past 12 hours, clearer in the early part of the day. Those clouds are really starting to increase right now. Zooming in closer to where the Olympic Stadium is, we're taking a peek at what the rain, snow, or mix is going to be. It looks like it's going to be dry for the remainder of this evening into tomorrow when the opening ceremony does begin. There is a chance for seeing some snow, but it's going to be staying mostly to the south of Pyeongchang. Now, any chance of snow that they do get will help since it is the Winter Olympics and they need the snowfall for all of the different skiing events and snowboarding and everything that is outside. So the fact that it's in South Korea and they're not seeing any snow right now is maybe a little concerning, but they definitely have enough snowfall on the ground already to make the Winter Olympics be okay.
Exactly. Now, I know I'm a big fan of the Winter Olympics. What's your favorite event in the Winter Olympics?
I like the skiing and the ice skating.
Okay.
Those are my favorites. I just think they're so mesmerizing to see all the flips and turns and all that.
I remember watching that on TV as a child. I guess my favorite would be snowboarding. I've always been a big fan. I know Shaun White was one of my favorites from back in the day, so I'm excited to see him perform again.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see which people are going to be representing the U.S. this year. I know I haven't been really keeping up for who's going to be on which of the teams, so I think it's definitely going to be something fun to watch tomorrow.
Exactly. No, I haven't been keeping up with it either, but I had heard a lot of people talking about definitely the opening ceremonies. Now, I've missed the past couple, but I heard they're really, really interesting to watch.
Yeah, the last one I saw was a few years ago. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but I think that's probably one of my favorite parts of the Olympics, just because you see all the countries come together and see, it's just like obviously it's a welcoming ceremony,
Right.
but it just feels more like a ceremony.
Yeah, and
very entertaining and exciting.
Right. So that just about does it for another episode of The Cold Front. Our next episode will be in 2 weeks. Follow us at VUTV Weather on Facebook for the latest weather updates.
Also stay up to date on the latest news here on campus and around the country by following VUTV on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
I'm Joy.
And I'm Sabrina. Have a great week, Valpo.